Okay, let's unpack this deep dive. We're jumping into something that's quietly changing how we interact with businesses every single day. We're looking at embedded software payments, often called in-app payments.
That's right. Yeah, think of it like paying directly inside the app you're already using.
Hmm.
You don't get bounced somewhere else. You don't have to pull out a card separately. And our source material for this is really interesting. It's a recent survey of 1,000 U.S. consumers. NMI did the survey.
Right, NMI. And they specialize in payments, financial services, so they really know this space. Our mission here really is to pull out the most important insights from what they found. We want to understand, who's using these payments, where do people wish they could use them, what makes it a good experience, and maybe most importantly, what does this all mean for businesses and the software platforms they use?
Absolutely. This survey really drives home that what maybe seemed like a niche thing just a few years back, it's totally mainstream now. And it's really being driven by shifting consumer expectations, especially with younger people. It also flags some, clear demands around things we all care about: speed, convenience, feeling like you're getting rewarded.
Okay, so let's dive right into that first big finding then, because the survey makes it pretty crystal clear. In payments aren't just for ordering food or getting a ride anymore. Consumers have fully embraced them. It's a regular part of life now.
They really have. I mean, look at the numbers. Half of all the people they surveyed are making in-payments at least once a week. That's a huge chunk of the population just routinely using this tech.
And the real sort of energy behind this trend, the surge, it seems like it's really concentrated with the younger generations, right? Gen Z, Millennials?
Oh, without a doubt. They are absolutely leading the charge here. Just think about this. 32% of Gen Z and 29% of Millennials told NMI they use in-app payments at least once a day.
A day.
Per day, yeah. And if you stretch that out to just weekly usage, 70% of Gen Z are making payments this way. 70%. That's almost 3/4 of young adults paying inside apps every single week.
That 70% weekly number for Gen Z, that's just massive. And it's not just frequency, is it? The survey suggests it actually affects their choices about, where they spend money.
It absolutely does. A
Yeah.
really solid number. 54% of both Gen Z and Millennials said that whether or not app payments are available influences where they decide to shop or, do business. So for these groups, it's becoming a factor in customer acquisition and retention too.
And they don't see this slowing down. They expect it to keep growing.
Nope. They expect more of it. 65% of Gen Z and 57% of Millennials said they anticipate using payments even more frequently in the coming year. They definitely see this as the way things are headed.
Here's the stat that really jumped out at me, showing that vision. 67% of both Gen Z and Millennials said they'd pay for literally everything through an app if they could. That's not just, oh, it's convenient. That's a really powerful statement about the kind of experience they want.
It really is. So I think the key takeaway from this first part is this isn't some, fringe tech anymore. It's not just for certain niches. In-payments are mainstream now, and the direction is clearly up, up, up. And it's fueled by the consumers who are, rapidly becoming the dominant force in the economy.
Which really changes things, doesn't it? It goes from being nice to have maybe a competitive edge to basically a baseline expectation, especially if you're a business trying to connect with younger customers, or if you're a young entrepreneur yourself choosing software to run your new venture.
Precisely. Yeah, if your software platform doesn't make payments easy and seamless, you're potentially shutting the door on a really big and growing part of the market.
Okay, so we know people are using them, especially young people, and it influences their choices. But where do they actually want to use these embedded payments? Beyond the usual stuff like food delivery or ride sharing.
That's a great question. And the survey findings show a pretty strong appetite among consumers for using embedded payments in a much, much wider range of their daily lives than, is common right now.
Really? What kind of areas did the survey point to? Where do people want this?
Well, the research highlighted significant interest in embedding payments into everyday services. Health and wellness providers, therapists, gyms, beauty and personal care, even home services.
Yeah.
Paying your plumber or your house cleaner directly through their scheduling app, maybe.
Interesting. So the potential market here is just way broader than just online shopping or ordering takeout.
Much, much broader. And the implication there is that businesses, particularly B2C, consumer-facing ones, and maybe more importantly, platforms these businesses run on, they really need to get that this expectation isn't just for, tech companies in Silicon Valley anymore. Customers across all sorts of industries might increasingly just expect the convenience of paying right there in the app, whatever the service is.
It's sort of about consistency, maybe. Like, if I can pay for my coffee or my bus pass with just a tap in an app, why should paying my, I don't know, my gym membership feel clunkier?
Exactly. The bar for convenience is just getting raised everywhere.
Okay, now let's shift gears a bit. What makes these experiences good experiences? The survey looked into features people value, right? And one thing that really popped was personalization, like getting tailored offers or rewards.
Yeah, this is a really interesting bit because you might guess, okay, that's probably mostly the younger crowd wanting personalized deals. But the survey, it showed the desire for personalization and payments is actually strong across all age groups, not just Gen Z.
Really? I sort of assumed older generations might be less keen on apps suggesting discounts based on habits.
Well, the data says otherwise. A pretty significant 72%, that's nearly three-quarters, of all respondents found an app appealing if it, and I'm quoting here, automatically suggests rewards and discounts based on your purchasing habits.
Okay, 72% overall is definitely a solid majority. How did that break down by age again?
So it was definitely highest among the younger groups, 82% for Gen Z, and an even higher 85% for millennials. Huge numbers. But look at Gen X, still very high at 74%. And even half of baby boomers, 50%, found this appealing.
So the real insight here isn't just, hey, people like discounts, is it? It's more like the expectation for payment systems has fundamentally shifted. They're not just passive ways to move money anymore. They need to be active tools that engage customers, build loyalty, enhance that relationship.
Precisely. And, that adds a layer of complexity if you're trying to build your own payment features from scratch. It really underlines why these integrated sort of all-in-one solutions, ones that can connect payments to loyalty programs and customer data, are becoming so much more attractive. You're not just, handling the transaction, you're helping the business understand and reward their customers in a smarter way.
Right, it's not enough just to process the payment. You need to layer in that intelligence about the customer and actually use it to create value.
Exactly. Make the payment experience part of the overall value you're offering.
Okay, let's look at one last key finding from the survey. How comfortable are consumers with biometric authentication? Using your fingerprint or your face to confirm a purchase in an app?
Yeah, biometrics offer some clear wins in mobile payments. It's fast, right?
Yeah.
And it adds a really strong layer of security. And the survey shows that consumers are increasingly comfortable with using this.
What was the overall number? How comfortable are people generally?
Overall, 64% of all respondents said they are comfortable using biometrics fingerprint, facial recognition to complete mobile app purchases.
And the age breakdown, was that another thing driven mainly by younger users?
Well, comfort is highest in the younger groups, but it's still pretty strong across the board, actually. 66% of Gen X said they were comfortable. Then it climbs to 75% for millennials, and a really substantial 80% for Gen Z.
And quite a few are more than just comfortable, right? They're like very comfortable.
Yes, exactly. If you look specifically at those who say they are very comfortable, it was 50% of millennials and 53% of Gen Z. So yeah, over half of those really key demographics are completely at ease using their biometrics for payments inside apps.
So the takeaway here seems to be consumers aren't just adopting embedded payments, but they're also ready for and frankly accepting of more advanced security features that are built right into that app experience.
They absolutely are. And having that biometric authentication built into the app, it provides really robust fraud prevention, but in a way that feels totally seamless and fast to the user, which is, a win-win for everybody involved. It cuts down fraud, protects revenue.
Right. Adds trust, reduces friction. That seems like a pretty crucial part of a good embedded payment experience.
It's absolutely crucial.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What this deep dive into the NMI survey sources has really shown us is embedded payments. They're not niche anymore. They're mainstream. They're an expectation, especially for younger generations who are, shaping the future market. And consumers want this convenience, this ability to pay inside apps, to spread far beyond where it's common today, into everyday services, less traditional sectors.
Yeah, and they place a really high value on personalization, rewards, discounts. And that's not just a young user thing. It's pretty significant across generations.
Yeah. And finally, people are getting really comfortable with advanced security, like biometrics, being integrated right into the app flow.
These trends, taken together, they really represent a fundamental shift, I think, in consumer expectations, how they expect to interact with payments and the software platforms that handle them. It really impacts businesses across pretty much all sectors. It forces them to rethink their payment strategy.
It definitely feels like a major transformation underway. So, given that young consumers told NMI they'd pay for everything through an app if they could, here's a final thought, maybe something provocative for you, the listener, to consider. What traditional business or service, one that hasn't typically used in payments yet, do you think will be most transformed by this trend next? And how might that change the experience for us as customers?
Thanks for joining us. And be sure to tune in next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic in the world of payments.